approximately 30 days to complete. So we'll need to come back for sentencing no earlier than 30 days. When would the parties wish?
The moment the guilty verdicts rang out in that Jacksonville courtroom, Hakeem Ksoo Robinson's entire world shattered. Based on the verdict of the jury, finding you guilty of the offense, the court does hereby remand you to the custody of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. But what cut the deepest wasn't the sentence. It was the betrayal from his own blood that sealed his fate. Sitting here today, you realize that you were testifying against not only co-defendants, but family members. Yes. Why are you doing that? I've got the details from the betrayal to Ksoo's wild reaction as he faces the brutal reality of life behind bars. Let's get into it. Ksoo's world crumbles, the verdict that changed everything. When that gavel dropped on July 31st, 2025, Hakeem Ksoo Robinson stood up slowly at the defense table, his face painted with pure disbelief. The 26-year-old ATK rapper had just been found guilty of first-degree murder in the killing of Charles Lil Buck McCormick Jr., and the weight of that mandatory life sentence, without parole, was hitting him like a sledgehammer to the chest. The courtroom footage captured every raw emotion as Ksoo turned to look back at his family in the gallery, seeing emotional relatives, watching their loved one's fate being sealed. He shook his head repeatedly. That signature head shake that would become viral across social media platforms within hours. His body language told the whole story. Slumped shoulders, lingering glances at family, and that look of a man who knew his rap career, his freedom, his entire life as he knew it was over. But this wasn't just any murder conviction. This was the culmination of a 7-day trial in Duval County Court that began in late July 2025. The case centered around the January 15th, 2020 execution-style killing of Lil Buck, a 23-year-old rapper with loose ties to the rival KTA gang. What made this murder even more cold-blooded was the timing. It happened exactly 1 year to the day after Ksoo's half-brother, Willie Boss Goon Addison, was gunned down, making it clear this wasn't random violence, but calculated revenge. The evidence against Ksoo was overwhelming, painting a picture of premeditated murder that would make even the hardest street soldiers cringe. Prosecutors presented dash cam footage showing the shooter chasing and firing at McCormick, with the victim trying desperately to escape before being gunned down in broad daylight. The state's case was built on more than just video evidence, though. They had rap lyrics from Ksoo's songs that were interpreted as confessions, including lines about smoking Dirk and BBY to the face, and Instagram post with Lil Buck's photo caption, "Bye-bye." But the most devastating blow came from within Ksoo's own bloodline. Abdul Robinson Sr., known on the streets as Blue, took the witness stand and identified his own son as the shooter in that dashcam video. This wasn't just any witness. This was the man who helped found ATK, the same gang his son rode for, now pointing the finger directly at his own flesh and blood. The day that Charles McCormick was murdered on January 15th, 2020, does that specific day hold any significance for you and your family? Yes. And why is that day significant in your mind? It's the date that my son got killed. Who was your son that got killed? Well, Allison, is he your biological child? No. Do you still consider him to be your son? Yes. The courtroom was silent as Blue testified, stating, "I know my kids." When asked to identify the shooter, this moment represented more than just testimony. It was a father choosing his own freedom over his son's life. Blue had cut a deal with prosecutors, pleading guilty to accessory charges and agreeing to testify against both his sons in exchange for reducing his potential 60-year sentence to just 76 months. The betrayal cut even deeper when you understand Blue's motivation.
Picture than the one presented by multiple witnesses.
So if I can give a description of how I describe my brother, I would say that I call him fat, slew-footed, which we would say 2 left feet. I call him stocky and tallest. He's a giant to me.
That physical description could be a key part of the defense's strategy in a direct challenge of the prosecution's case. With several eyewitnesses, including Jacksonville police officers, describing the shooter as shorter and slimmer and around 5'8", the Robinson counsel questions how their client can be the shooter when
he cited health issues, including diabetes, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, and failing kidneys, as reasons for cooperating. But it wasn't just about his health. Blue wanted to be there for his younger children, including an 8-year-old daughter and 6-year-old twins. He described the decision as the hardest I've had to make in my life, acknowledging it would make his life harder after release, and that life sentences for his sons might be worse than death. The family dynamics were already fractured, but Blue's testimony shattered whatever remained. Online reactions were mixed, with some viewing it as a father teaching accountability, while others labeled it outright betrayal. Comments flooded social media with reactions like, "Imagine the betrayal, and if my dad did this, I'd cry on the spot." The streets don't forgive snitching, especially when it comes from your own blood. But Ksoo wasn't the only family member caught up in this web of violence and betrayal. His brother Abdul Robinson Jr. was also charged with second-degree murder in the McCormick case and is set for a separate trial. Their cousin Leroy ATK Scotty Whitaker was tried alongside Ksoo as an accomplice and also found guilty of first-degree murder by a separate jury. The evidence against Whitaker was just as damaging. DNA evidence placed him at the scene, including his blood found on the victim's clothing after he cut himself jumping a fence during their escape. A loaded AR-15 rifle found in the getaway car was linked to Whitaker with the weapon set to fire and containing 26 rounds of ammunition, showing clear intent to kill. The prosecution's star witness was Dominique Barner, the getaway driver, who accepted a plea deal reducing his potential life sentence to 20 years. Barner testified that Ksoo orchestrated the hit, detailing how they found McCormick's address online, waited outside his apartment, and followed him to the plaza where the murder occurred. The defense tried to poke holes in the prosecution's case, arguing that the shooter in the video appeared shorter and slimmer than Ksoo's 61 to 230 pounds frame. They also challenged the credibility of witnesses like Barner, noting his history of lying to police and multiple plea deals. But the mountain of evidence was too overwhelming. Fingerprints, DNA, cell phone data, and most damaging of all, his father's testimony. Sentencing is scheduled for the week of September 8, 2025, where Ksoo will officially receive his mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. But this conviction is just the beginning. He still faces another trial for the 2019 murder of 16-year-old Adrian BBY Gaynor Jr., where he could potentially receive another life sentence. So, we'll need to come back for sentencing no earlier than 30 days. When would the parties wish to return? The courtroom reactions captured in viral clips showed the raw emotion of a young man watching his life slip away. But they also revealed something deeper about the fractured state of Jacksonville's most notorious gang family. The same streets that made Ksoo a local legend were now demanding their pound of flesh. And the very family members who helped build ATK were the ones tearing it down from within. The betrayal, the violence, the endless cycle of revenge. It all led to this moment where a father had to choose between his freedom and his son's life. And he chose himself. Blood in the streets, the ATK vs KTA war that consumed Jacksonville. The roots of Jacksonville's deadliest gang feud run deeper than most people realize, stretching back to 2017, when territorial disputes and personal beefs began escalating between ATK, AC's top killers, and KTA. Kill Them All, also known as 6 Block. What started as neighborhood beef transformed into a full-scale war that would claim over a dozen lives and turned the city's drill rap scene into a literal battleground where diss tracks became death sentences. The spark that ignited
the murder trial of Jacksonville rapper Hakeem Ksoo Robinson and his cousin Leroy Whitaker. It's one step closer to going to the jury. Closing arguments began this afternoon. Both men are charged in the 2020 shooting death of 23-year-old Charles Lil Buck McCormick Jr. Prosecutors say the motive involved a diss track McCormick created. News 4 Jax reporter Brianna Brownlee has been following this trial from the beginning. She's joining us now live outside the courthouse with the latest on this.
Yes, it was a day full of disruptions in the courtroom.
This deadly feud came in June 2018 with the ambush at a Waycross, Georgia restaurant where ATK leader Yunjin Ace was shot 8 times, but survived while his brother Trayvon Bullard and 2 associates were killed. KTA was immediately blamed for the hit, and the streets knew this wasn't going to slide, but it was the killing of Willie Boss Goon Addison later that year in a drive-by shooting after a rap event that really set off the powder cake. Willie wasn't just another street soldier. He was Ksoo's half-brother and a respected figure in ATK, and his death would fuel a revenge campaign that's still claiming lives today. The first major retaliation came in February 2019 when 16-year-old Adrian BBY Gaynor Jr., a KTA-affiliated rapper, was shot over 60 times at Hilltop Village Apartments. Prosecutors would later charge Ksoo with this murder, alleging the roots of Jacksonville's deadliest gang feud run deeper than most people realize, stretching back to 2017 when territorial disputes and personal beefs began escalating between ATK, AC's top killers, and KTA. Kill Them All, also known as 6 Block. What started as neighborhood beef transformed into a full-scale war that would claim over a dozen lives and turn the city's drill rap scene into a literal battleground where diss tracks became death sentences. The spark that ignited this deadly feud came in June 2018 with the ambush at a Waycross, Georgia restaurant where ATK leader Yunjin Ace was shot 8 times, but survived while his brother Trayvon Bullard and 2 associates were killed. KTA was immediately blamed for the hit, and the streets knew this wasn't going to slide. However, it was the killing of Willie Boss Goon Addison later that year in a drive-by shooting after a rap event that really set off the powder cake. Willie wasn't just another street soldier. He was Ksoo's half-brother, and his death would fuel a revenge campaign that's still claiming lives today. The first major retaliation came in February 2019 when 16-year-old Adrian BBY Gaynor Jr., a KTA-affiliated rapper, was shot over 60 times at Hilltop Village Apartments. Prosecutors would later charge Ksoo with this murder, alleging it was direct payback for Willie's death. BBY wasn't just some random target. He was tight with KTA's leadership, and his murder sent shock waves through the rival camp. But these weren't just street killings happening in the shadows. They were being broadcast to the world through drill rap tracks that mocked the dead and glorified the viral. ATK's Who I Smoke became a viral sensation with over 33 million views, featuring Spinabins, Wapawit Chapoa, Yunjin Ace, and Fast Money Goon dancing over the graves of their rivals, while rapping Who I Smoke Bibby and Who I Smoke Buck. The track was built over a Vanessa Carlton sample, creating this twisted contrast between the upbeat melody and the cold-blooded lyrics celebrating murder. KTA wasn't going to let that slide. Julio Fulio, the charismatic leader of KTA, fired back with When I See You, a track that gained 24 million views and mocked the 2018 ambush with lyrics like Went out to eat on his birthday, 4 shot, 3 dead, smoking 23. The 23 and was a direct reference to young Ace's dead brother. And Fulio wasn't done there. He had the audacity to reference Ksoo directly, rapping bluing in that jam. I swear they need to free that man Ksoo so he could catch a headshot. This wasn't just rap beef. This was psychological warfare being waged through music videos and social media posts. Theo would film videos at grave sites and memorials, amplifying the disrespect and re-traumatizing victims' families. Mothers of victims like BBY and Corbin Johnson expressed outrage over the mockery, with one stating it felt like reliving the trauma through viral videos. Ksoo played a crucial role in escalating this war beyond just words. His tracks like Ksoo and Been Dead continue.
Today, from a 2-hour delay because of witnesses and technical issues from the court causing audio issues during testimony as well as closing arguments. And in a surprising twist, someone from the Robinson family was banned from the courtroom because they were live streaming testimony. However, despite all this, closing arguments did happen, but this was after Hakeem Robinson's older sister took the stand to defend her baby brother.
Hell no.
This was the immediate reaction from Hakeem Robinson's older sister when she first saw the photo of the
lines mocking BBY's closed casket funeral, rapping about smoking Dirk and Bibby to the face. But it wasn't just the music. Ksoo would post on Instagram with pictures of Lil Buck captioned, "Bye-bye," essentially bragging about murders before they were even solved. The violence escalated throughout 2020 with Lil Buck's murder on January 15th. Exactly 1 year after Willie Addison's death, representing the calculated nature of this revenge cycle. Fulio survived multiple attempts on his life, including being shot in the foot in 2020, but he kept taunting his enemies through music and social media. The major players in this deadly game read like a who's who of Jacksonville street elite. On the ATK side, you had young Gene Ace King Atta Bullet as the undisputed leader, a rapper with millions of followers who survived multiple shooting attempts and released hits that celebrated violence. Alongside him were Spin Abs and Wapate de Chopa from the NHino Hospital Gang subset, who became viral sensations with their roles in Who I Smoke. Fast Money Goon rounded out the core crew, while soldiers like Ksoo and ATK Scotty handled the wet work. The KTA/6 block side was anchored by Julio Fulio Jones, whose charisma and musical talent made him a local legend even as he survived assassination attempt after assassination attempt. Young soldiers like BBY and Lil Buck paid the ultimate price for their loyalty, while figures like Jake Jit and Rico Osama also fell victim to the endless cycle of retaliation. Ksoo's role in this escalation cannot be overstated. His alleged involvement in both Bibby's 2019 murder and Lil Buck's 2020 killing represented a significant escalation in the violence, transforming personal grief into widespread retaliation. His family's deep involvement with Father Abdul Sr. as ATK's founder and brother Abdul Jr., also facing charges, showed how this wasn't just gang business, it was family business. The feud reached its bloody climax on June 23, 2024, when Julio Fulio was ambushed and killed during his 26th birthday celebration in Tampa. Fulio had been kicked out of an Airbnb party due to overcrowding and relocated to a Holiday Inn, posting his location on Instagram stories, a fatal mistake that allowed his enemies to track him down. Around 4:40 a.m., masked gunmen ambushed Fulio in the parking lot, firing over 100 rounds into his black Dodge Journey and killing him while wounding 3 others. Police described it as a targeted hit tied to the Jacksonville gang feud, with unconfirmed reports suggesting a $10,000 bounty from young nadies. The arrest came swiftly. By late July 2024, Tampa Police and Jacksonville Sheriff's Office had arrested 5 suspects: Isaiah Chance, 23, Alicia Andrews, 21, Sean Gath, 18, Rashad Murphy, 30, and Davian Murphy, 27. There were 3 people who pulled the trigger. You saw it on the video. 5 people, though, were charged with this heinous crime. The trial was a somber reminder of the devastating consequences of gang violence in Jacksonville. Ksoo, already serving time for his alleged role in other murders, was sentenced to life without parole. The verdict marked a turning point in the city's fight against gang violence. It showed that those responsible for these senseless killings would face justice. As the court proceedings concluded, many in the community breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that Ksoo would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Goodbye forever became more than just a phrase. It was a reflection of the city's hope for peace and an end to the bloodshed. The case served as a reminder that gang violence has no place in our society, and that those who perpetuate it will be held accountable. The aftermath of the trial saw a significant decrease in gang-related activity in Jacksonville, with many young people turning away from the violent lifestyle. It was
alleged gunman in the 2020 killing of Charles McCormick, and it was questioned if it was her younger brother. In court Wednesday, even now, years later, with her brother on trial accused of that murder, she testified there's no way that's him.
He's approximately 5'8" to 5'10", black male.
Tim Graham is now a retired JSO officer, but 5 years ago, on the day of the shooting, he was one of the officers chasing the shooter and gave the description of 5'8" and a bit athletic.
Did you see this person jump a couple of fences?
Absolutely.
He was able to evade Officer Prater?
And me.
Robinson's sister didn't hold back when describing her brother, painting a different picture.
a beacon of hope for a brighter future, one where the streets were safer and the next generation could grow without the specter of gang violence hanging over their heads. As Ksoo sat in his cell, his music career now nothing but a memory, he couldn't help but think about the path that led him there. The memories of his brother's murder, the thrill of writing diss tracks, and the rush of adrenaline from the violence all seemed like distant echoes of a life left behind. The court had spoken. Ksoo was to spend the rest of his days in prison, a constant reminder of the devastating consequences of gang violence. Goodbye forever became more than just a phrase. It was a eulogy for a lifestyle that brought nothing but pain and suffering. In the end, justice was served, but at what cost? The city would never forget the lives lost, the families shattered, and the young men who succumbed to the allure of gang life. As Ksoo's story faded into memory, it served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of gang violence and the importance of seeking a better path. Goodbye forever was more than just a phrase. It was a reminder that there is always hope for redemption, no matter how far we have strayed from the right path. As Ksoo sat in his cell, his music career now nothing but a memory, he couldn't help but think about the path that led him there. The memories of his brother's murder, the thrill of writing diss tracks, and the rush of adrenaline from the violence all seemed like distant echoes of a life left behind. The court had spoken. Ksoo was to spend the rest of his days in prison, a constant reminder of the devastating consequences of gang violence. Goodbye forever became more than just a phrase. It was a eulogy for a lifestyle that brought nothing but pain and suffering. In the early 2010s, Jacksonville streets were abuzz with the rise of a new sound, drill rap. Ksoo was at the forefront of this movement, his music career taking off with tracks like Who I Smoke, gaining millions of views. But amidst the hype, there was another side to Ksoo, one that would eventually lead him down a path from which he could never return. The violent imagery and boasts about real murders in his lyrics were not just artistic expressions, but seemed to document crimes as they happened. Investigators dissected his Instagram posts, revealing videos of rival Lil Buck captioned "Bye-bye" with waving emojis and another stating, "Killer then go get my toes done." These posts would later be cited by prosecutors as him bragging about murders on social media. A 2019 album cover that was initially met with controversy for its violent imagery had been deleted from the internet. This image showed how deep his immersion in this violent lifestyle had become. Ksoo's role as an enforcer for ATK only further solidified his place within this world of violence and gang warfare. The February 2019 murder of 16-year-old Adrian BBY Gaynor Jr. marked a turning point in Ksoo's life, marking his transformation from rapper to killer. Prosecutors alleged Ksoo shot BBY over 60 times at Hilltop Village Apartments as retaliation for Willie Addison's death, suggesting deeply personal rage rather than just gang business. The case against Ksoo relied heavily on witness testimonies, including from Ksoo's own father, who implicated him in the crime. The evidence was overwhelming. Cell phone tower data placed devices near the murder scene at the time of the killing, and Ksoo's main phone went silent for 6 hours around that time. In addition to the physical evidence, social media activity and music were dissected by investigators, with JSO Sergeant Christopher Smith testifying about how tracks like Ksoo Homicide contained details only the killer would know. The prosecution argued these weren't artistic expressions, but literal confessions to murder. The case also revealed the extent of the Robinson family's involvement in Jacksonville's gang violence. Ksoo's brother, Abdul Jr., faces separate charges for the same Lil Buck murder.
He's around 6'3".
And keep in mind, shooter doesn't stop, say measure me. He's running and gunning.
The state argued that size descriptions may have varied because the shooter was in motion and it was a chaotic scene. During closing arguments, the state addressed the height and weight concerns, saying some witnesses didn't give the exact measurements because it was a quick, intense situation, adding that Robinson may have gained weight since
Their father, Abdul Sr., cooperation with prosecutors created an unprecedented situation where a gang founder was testifying against his own sons. Ksoo's criminal history wasn't just limited to these high-profile murders. While he had no prior felony convictions before his 2020 arrest, his rapid escalation into violent crime marked a dramatic transformation from wannabe rapper to alleged serial killer. On October 5, 2021, while awaiting trial at Duval County Jail, Ksoo was involved in a physical altercation with corrections officers. Surveillance video showed an officer slamming him to the ground after he resisted returning to his cell, allegedly threatening officers and making gurgling noises as if to spit. Ksoo's family claimed he was being targeted, citing a simultaneous shooting of his sister, Karen Robinson, in the face at Avenues Mall that same day, though no direct connection was proven. The incident highlighted how even behind bars, the violence and paranoia of street life continued to follow him. Ksoo was arrested on September 10, 2020 following an investigation into multiple murders linked to the ATK gang feud. He was initially charged with first-degree murder as a criminal gang member for Lil Buck's killing, which carries a mandatory life sentence without parole in Florida upon conviction. He has remained in custody without bond since his arrest, facing pretrial hearings as early as April 2025. The prosecution's case was strengthened by cell phone tower data that placed devices near the murder scene at the time of the killing. Though they couldn't definitively prove it was Ksoo's phone, the data showed suspicious activity patterns, with his main phone going silent for 6 hours around the time of the murder. FBI experts testified about the significance of this communication blackout, suggesting it was intentional to avoid detection. The prosecution argued this was similar to using a stolen car to commit murder, something that couldn't be traced back to you. The same social media posts and rap lyrics that made him a local legend became the evidence that sealed his fate. Ksoo's family is fractured beyond repair, and his name will forever be associated with the deadly gang war that consumed Jacksonville streets. At just 26 years old, Ksoo has likely seen the last free day of his life. His music career is over. The boy who grew up in a house where gang affiliation was a birthright became the man whose own father put him away forever, completing a cycle of violence and betrayal that defines the streets he claimed to represent. The sentencing for Ksoo's first-degree murder conviction is scheduled for September 8, 2025. He still awaits trial for BBY Gaynor Jr.'s murder. Another life sentence could be imposed if convicted. The transformation from Hakeem Robinson, a young brother from Jacksonville's north side with musical aspirations, to Ksoo, represents more than just one person's fall from grace. It's a cautionary tale about how the streets consume everything they touch: talent, family bonds, loyalty, and ultimately freedom itself. In the dimly lit courtroom, Ksoo's eyes wandered across the sea of faces, each reflecting a mix of emotions. Some wore expressions of sorrow and loss, while others displayed a sense of relief that justice had been served. As he took in this scene, it was hard not to wonder if anyone truly understood what his story symbolized: the devastating impact of street life on even the most talented and promising individuals. The narrative of Ksoo's downfall is as much about the streets as it is about him. Growing up on Jacksonville's north side, where gang affiliation was a birthright, Hakeem Robinson, also known as Ksoo, always felt like he had two paths to choose from: music or violence. He chose the former, pouring his heart and soul into creating melodies that could uplift and inspire others. But the allure of street life proved too strong, and Ksoo eventually succumbed to its allure.
Charles was?
I did.
Now, how close would you say you got to him?
All the way to him.
And what did you see?